Hey y'all, I'm Melissa Guerra. I'm the Kitchen Wrangler, and welcome to my podcast on food history, where I get to nerd out in all of my glory. Oh yes. And if you have subscribed to my other channel, you will see that I actually do know how to cook. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I know a lot more about food. And anyway, it's really my pleasure to share whatever I know and I don't know with you. At this point, I think I have 3 subscribers. They are my family. I don't think they're my family, but they are the family of my heart. So I'm super grateful for my little set of followers. Thank all y'all so very much. And today our subject matter is lettuce, which sounds incredibly boring, but it is incredibly sexy. And so anyway, there's a lot to say about it. So let's jump right on into the subject matter. So today I wanted to start off, though, because this is podcast number 2, and because I fully expect for there to be some sort of technical difficulty, and you'll probably never even see this video because I'll probably have to record it again. What I wanted to start out with is why I am so interested in food history. Like, what is so compelling for me? And, I grew up in a family of history nuts. And I mean nut in every sense of the word, just super enthusiastic about Texas history. I was not into it at any point. And somewhere in my 20s, I discovered the subject of food history, and it just absolutely blew my mind. For the first time, I could really look at history without looking at people. Because I think people can spin their own stories a lot of time. And food, it tells us a lot without talking. And anyway, I think food is a great subject matter to talk about the history of humanity without getting into who are the heroes and who are the anti-heroes, because I don't care about those folks at all. If I can't eat it, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't even want to know about it. So I got really, really into food history. And one of the blessings in my life, which I never anticipated, is where I live. I was born and raised on the border of Mexico. So I live on the southern border of Texas. So I get to live between English and Spanish. I get to live in a part of the United States that is really unfamiliar to a lot of the rest of the United States. We have a very, very particular culture. And me trying to understand my own identity as an incredibly gawky 5'10" red-haired woman, I really had to look to food to give me more of my identity living here in the Rio Grande Valley. And I have to say that food has just been that medium for me to learn about myself and my identity, my cultural identity. And so it's really vital for me to share this information with you, because you don't live where I live, or maybe you do. And if you do, it's probably one of the 3 people that have subscribed to my podcast. But chances are you don't live where I do. But I want to give you some tools to identify what exactly makes your cuisine and your community so unique and so special, because I think what I have learned over the years is really applicable in just so many communities. So as opposed to this podcast about me and what I think, it's really more about you and what you into context of your community and your identity. So that said, I'm reading my notes here because I really have not figured out the little screen readery thing. What do you call those things? What the heck do you call those things? Please leave a note in comments, because obviously I've got some sort of memory issue at the moment. Dagnabbit, what do you call those things? Anyway, so I do look at my notes. I am obsessed with identity. And like I said, because I live between 2 cultures, I'm always trying to figure out identity. And it is completely linked to food. And we are going to use lettuce as the example of how I can talk about food identity. I tried to pick out what I thought was the most innocuous teleprompter. That's it. It's a teleprompter. Shoo. Anyway, I try to pick out the most innocuous food substance that I could that is on everything. And so here you also get to experience my inability to run StreamYard. Over here, StreamYard. I'm just learning how to use it right now. And so I am still practicing. But let me show you. Look at this. Is this not amazing? Let's see if I can. I don't think I can even blow that up. Let's see if that can work. No, not really. Not all that much. I'm learning how to use this technology little by little. But look at this amazing painting of this woman and this man with a bunch of lettuce. Now, these people are not bored. They are not bored at all. They are really either into each other or they really, really are craving some salad. They are really into this lettuce that they are selling. And I just think it's a really, really beautiful painting. But I thought I would leave it up there while I start talking about lettuce and food history. But as you watch my podcast, there is one theme, in addition to me living on the border, there's one theme that I always, always, always go back to. And that is that wherever an ingredient comes from, the origin, those are the people that get to take credit for its current popularity. That is always the message that I have. So when we're talking about corn, we absolutely have to talk about the ingenuity of the botanists of the Native American community. You absolutely, absolutely have to talk about that. When we talk about wheat, we have to talk about the Fertile Crescent and the ownership that the people of the Fertile Crescent have in wheat, because they were the first ones to figure out that that stuff was edible and that it could be cultivated and changed and shaped and made into what we know as wheat. So this is a theme. For a long time, I taught food history, and this was a theme that I always went back to with my chef students. And some of my students, it was such a joy to teach them because I got to find out what they didn't know. And many of them came from island countries where bananas were super popular, and it absolutely blew their mind to realize that bananas were not native to their island home. And anyway, I learned so much from my students. I'm hoping they learned a little bit from me. I'm not sure, but anyway, but those days have gone. And so anyway, I hope they learned something. So anyway, let's get back to what we're talking about here. So that said, where did lettuce come from? Like, lettuce had to have come from somewhere. And that is actually a very interesting subject because let's see. Okay, I'm going to try to change slides here. Let's see how this goes. Oh my goodness. What do we do here? Oh, next slide. Oh, yeah, this is why I did pick lettuce, because here on the border, we have a lot of our dishes are covered with lettuce. Why is that? Why is a lot of Mexican food simply covered in lettuce? I have my opinions. It's delicious. I think lettuce shows up because it looks great and it's not that expensive. And it adds a little bit of vegetables to a dish that might otherwise be kind of meaty and cheesy. So I think that's why we like lettuce here along the border. But did it come from the border? Absolutely not. Lettuce came from someplace else. So where did lettuce come from? So this, I am sure you have seen this in your yard, and I am sure you have cussed at it, and I am sure you have dug it up and you have thrown it away. But this is actually a wild lettuce. This is Latuca, what does it say? Verosa, and it is a wild lettuce. This is a primordial lettuce. And you're like, no, that is a weed that I poison with relish. I hate those things. It's actually a wild lettuce. And, if you've pulled them up, you've seen that there's this really long stalk underneath it. And that is what every lettuce has come from. It has been cultivated from these wild lettuces. Is that the plural? Lettuce. All right. So actually that iceberg lettuce, let's go back. Okay. So this one is Latuca Verosa. This one is iceberg lettuce, and it is Latuca sativa, but it is the cultivar that is capitata, which means a head. Anything that says it's a head of lettuce. It's a head of iceberg lettuce. And then we've got, this is Chinese stem lettuce, which is again a Latuca sativa. And it is a variation, whatever that says, because my glasses are not helping me at the moment. So all of them are derived from this crazy weed that we all dig out of the yard, cuss at, and throw away. You have to think of varieties like apples. You know, we go to the grocery store, we think, oh, I'm going to get an apple. Well, what kind of apple are you going to get? Like there's 10, 20, 30 different types of apples at the grocery store, depending on where you are. So, but they are all of that scientific name, whatever the scientific name for apple is, because I don't have it in my head at the moment. But it's the same thing with a lettuce. You have the wild variety, which is this Latuca of Rosa. And then you can have your iceberg lettuce, which somebody decided to get this weed and mess around with it until they got something that looked like this. It still has that center core, although it's up inside of the lettuce. This one has a center core, but it is outside the lettuce. And you can see like the little top part of it looks like romaine lettuce. So all of these different cultivars that have come from a wild plant, they have been manipulated by humankind to do what we want it to do. Iceberg lettuce, we wanted it to be round. We wanted it to work and live outside of a refrigerator. And stem lettuce, they wanted that really long, kind of chunky stem that has a flavor, and then the leaves. So every time a human got a hold of a wild plant, they messed around with it until they got exactly what they wanted out of it. All right, so now you can hear my notes flipping because I don't have a teleprompter. And okay, so when we talk about these primordial plants, then they all come from a ground zero somewhere. They come from a place. And finding those places can be kind of difficult. So if we look and we research as to where that nasty little weed, the Latuca of Rosa, where did that come from? Some people say Rome, the Romans had it. Some people had the Egyptians had it. But actually the oldest fossils of a Latuca is from where present-day Argentina is. They have found fossils that are 50 million years old. So you think, wow, people from 50 million years ago must have been cultivating it. Not really, because humans have only been around for 200,000 years, and pre-humans have been around for about 2 million years. So if you'd have to be a lot worse at math than I am to not understand that these plants predated human cultivation. So that is how something like, I hope I'm explaining myself correctly. That is how something like a lettuce, like that little wacky weed that I showed you, that's how we can see them all over the world. Whatever animal was out in the field, they would have eaten that weed, they would have carried it around, they would have pooped it. That's what I'm trying to politely say. They would have pooped it. And then that increases the range of these plants. And it increases the range of the people that can find these plants and collect the wild seeds and start cultivating them. So these plants proliferated across our planet for 49,800,000 years until humans started knocking around. And who knows at what point they picked out those wild lettuce seeds and started cultivating until they got to an iceberg head of lettuce. So for me, again, this is what is so incredibly mind-blowing. So, and okay, I threw a word in here that you're not recognized. That, oh gosh, help me say this. I hope I say this right. Because I live in my head, I never know how people pronounce things. But this is, I'm going back to my high school Latin, asteraceae, aster, asters in the flower, not that fancy family out of New York. An aster is the daisy family. So anytime you see the word aster, you have to assume that that is the daisy family. Now, if we go back to that nasty little weed, let's go back. I'm sorry, little weed. I don't mean to call you nasty, but you kind of are. What did you think when you saw that? You're thinking dandelion, and you would be correct. It is absolutely part of they're all part of the aster family. Dandelions, lettuce, nasty weed. These are all part of the Asteraceae family. If you know how to pronounce this, please drop me a line in the comments below. Correct me. Seriously, somebody that does not live in their head, contact me because I never know how to say anything. All right. But that little guy, look at the leaves. Does that not look familiar? Does that not look like our nasty little Latuca of Rosa? It kind of does. It kind of does. So from the aster family, the seeds were collected, and different people in different parts of the world made this plant into different plants that we now eat as lettuce. So it's hard to say that lettuce originated all over the world, but it kind of did. I mean, this is one of the few examples that I can say that this plant has been around so long that humankind developed it much later. So I hope that makes sense. And so they are everywhere. And so this plant has had so much potential to be developed. Oh, and let's see what our next slide is. I know it's something. Oh, yes, the Romans. You know, one of my favorite books that really helped me to understand food history. And again, me living in my head, I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. I think it's Apicius, Apicius, and he wrote the first cookbook that was of the Romans, and he has several recipes of lettuces made into salads, and the dressings are really interesting. They're kind of sweet and sour. They have wine vinegar and honey and black pepper, and that was the salad that the Romans, who would eat lying down, this is their table where they would eat lying down, and this was the type of salad that they would eat. But I do want to go back and talk a little bit about the relationship that the Romans had with lettuce. Lettuce has always been associated with sex. And, you know, I did a lot of research and there was so much about sex. And I thought, you know, I cannot talk about this in my second podcast because y'all are just going to get the wrong idea that this is why I started the podcast. So here, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to talk about something really innocuous, but lettuce, it's about probably the sexiest plant out there. So I'm going to put some articles in the comments below that y'all can link to because we're just not ready for that yet with my 3 followers to be talking that much about lettuce and sex. It's kind of a lot. So anyway, read the articles. We'll have the grown-up talk later, but just right now, you know, I'm just going to ease into it. But suffice it to say, let's go back to that little dandelion guy for a minute. So, you know, if you're out in your yard and you're cutting down dandelions, you know, and you cut one open, what is the first thing you see? Well, it starts exuding this little milky fluid, and it's sticky and it's kind of gross. But that's actually how lettuce got its name, because in Latin, the word lactis means of milk. It's the genitive. It means of milk. So back then, the Romans, the Greeks, the ancient European cultures recognized this little fluid that was coming from these little wild lettuces. And they're like, oh, that's so sexy. And so they likened it to another bodily fluid, not milk, that looks very similar. And so that is how lettuce got its really sexy reputation. Like I said, I'm going to stop there. I had to talk to my kids and my husband and tell them, look, I picked this subject matter and it's kind of going off the rails. And they're like, you'll handle it. So that's how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to give you some links so you can read all about lettuce, but make sure that you're alone and you're not out in public because it's kind of spicy. It is kind of spicy. So I'm going to put those in the comments below. And yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, I think it's really interesting that ladies who lunch, you know, We're still going out there eating salads for lunch. I mean, a club sandwich just isn't as sexy as a salad. It still holds true today that people think that lettuce and salads are super healthy. They're good for your figure. And anyway, some of that, how do we say, some of that legend of lettuce still kind of hovers over our lunch table. I mean, well, over mine at least, because that's how I roll. So that's it. That's it for my first podcast. I was able to tiptoe through the subject matter of lettuce very well. At least I think I did. But make sure that you check in once a week. I'm going to be exploring more subjects about food history as they pertain to my Tex-Mex life here along the border. I think I have just this incredible opportunity to look at food the way nobody else in the United States get to, because I am right here at the portal to the Americas. And make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel where I'm presenting food, which is just Kitchen Wrangler. And this is a Kitchen Wrangler podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that too, because when you do, my following will exponentially increase from the 3 followers that I have at the moment. So 3 followers, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button. And for the rest of y'all, make sure you hit that button too, because I will be forever grateful. I am the Kitchen Wrangler, Melissa Guerra, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here at the ranch again soon. Bye now.